Hello friends, I'm meteorologist Kelly Greene, and what have we been talking about for the past week? Yes, a big winter storm, and unfortunately it really is not going to change much. Just the timing has been upped a little bit with this storm, but nonetheless it is going to be a very intense storm with some pretty major impacts. Now the National Weather Service just put out a warning, upgrading the watch into a warning that goes into effect tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. It'll continue into Saturday evening, Christmas Eve evening. Unfortunately, it is going to have some impacts for travels, and really it's going to be traveling by car and by plane, and also possibility of some power outages. Unfortunately, the timing could not be worse with this storm system. It is going to have big impacts. When we look at those winter impacts across central Indiana, the areas here in the orange, that's a moderate impact. We do expect to see these crashing temperatures, and that's going to cause a flash freeze. What does that mean? That means the rain that's on the surface out of this system, because we'll be on the warm side of the system when it starts off, we're going to see that temperature drop so drastically it's going to freeze the rain that's on the pavements, on sidewalks, parking lots, and that's going to cause very slick conditions. So we do think that's going to be a very big hazard. The wind is also going to be a very big hazard, causing some power lines to snap, and also the Arctic air. It is going to be bitter cold as we go into Friday on into the holiday weekend. So let's take a look, a little larger view here where we have this Arctic blast pushing in. We have rain that will move in on the front side of the system. On the warm side, this strong cold front that will push in, that's the Arctic cold front. So behind it is much colder air, and it has a lot of moisture to work with, unfortunately. So we are going to see some pretty high snow rates out of this system. It will continue from Thursday afternoon on into Friday morning, and then we'll see some wraparound moisture. Now on this map I've put on the isobars. What those are pressure gradient lines. So the tighter those pressure gradients are, the faster the wind speeds. So we're going to see these winds wrapping around this system, and they will be out of the northwest a good chunk of this time frame from Thursday into Friday afternoon. So those winds are really going to increase because the pressure is going to drop, which causes those pressure gradients to tighten up, and those winds will start to whip up very quickly throughout the day on Friday. So just a lot going on with this storm system, and it is going to have impacts all the way through the weekend. Let's take a little closer look here on Future Track 13. Starting the timeline at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, there's a possibility that we could see a little bit of a mixture of freezing rain, maybe some sleet first thing tomorrow morning. I think it will be brief. It will depend on the air temperature. The surface temperature could be at or below freezing, and that could cause some of that moisture to refreeze on the surfaces. So we could start off with a little bit of a icy condition, but it will be brief because the temperature is actually going to warm up during the morning hours into the early afternoon. In fact, we're going to see those temperatures climbing close to 40 degrees before the cold front starts to push in. And this is an Arctic front. Behind this cold front is going to be a bitter blast of very cold air, and that is going to cause that dense cold air to slide under the warmer air, and it is going to take over and push that very cold air forward across the central Indiana, allowing that column of air to get cold very quickly. So what does that mean? That means that when we start to see the leading edge of this cold front, the rain is going to transition very quickly into snow. It will be a heavy snow, and it will come down fast and furious. We're talking anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of snow per hour. So during the day Thursday, we'll start off with a little bit of that potential of freezing rain or sleet first thing in the morning. It'll transition to just some drizzle. It'll be patchy at times, not all day rain, but we are going to see the rain around a good portion of the morning into the early afternoon before we see that transition. So we'll see the high around 39-40 degrees tomorrow afternoon. The winds will still be lighter out of the south because we're going to be on the front side of that system, and as we have that little bit warmer air pushing in, and then that cold front allowing that wedge of cold air to push in, causing the dynamics in the atmosphere to bring this transition from rain into snow. 1 to 2 inches of snow per hour does look likely with this system. It will move from west to east. So we're starting the timeline to, Thursday at 1 p.m. So this cold front will start to move in, and we'll start to see this transition of that patchy drizzle into perhaps a little bit of sleet as we see that transition into snow showers. The heavier snow right behind that, and that will continue from west to east tomorrow afternoon into the evening, taking over all of central Indiana with those snow rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour. So that looks to be any time from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, west central Indiana, and then we'll see Indianapolis area perhaps around 6 p.m. starting to see those snow rates moving in, and then into east central Indiana likely after 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. And that will continue until about midnight. As you can see, we'll see the back edge of this around 8 o'clock west central Indiana. It'll continue to move out despite the fact that we are seeing drier conditions on the backside. That doesn't mean that we're not going to see more snow. We will see more snow. We may have a little dry slot in the atmosphere for a few hours as this will continue to wrap in those very tightly wind speeds that will be really gearing up about 45 to 55 miles per hour by Friday morning. So we're going to look at those heavier snow totals really along the I-70 corridor for a good chunk of central Indiana. Higher snow rates 6 to 8 inches for Lafayette, Kokomo, and points to the north. That's where we do think the heavier snow will be out of this system, a little closer to that low pressure system in the Great Lakes area. But along that I-70 corridor, I-74 corridor, 4 to 6 inches. We could even see some higher snow amounts in some areas. This is going to be tough because we're going to have a lot of strong winds. It's going to be tough to measure this snow. And because of those strong winds, it's going to break up the snow dendrites of that. And that's also going to cause those snow total to be a little lower. So this is going to be very intense when it first moves in. But we do think by Friday, sometime by afternoon, we'll catch that 4 to 6 inches of snow for that I-70 corridor. Down to the south, you're not out of the woods at all. I did have a message from Bloomington asking, are we not going to get anything? No, you will get something. You will still get the higher winds. You'll still get those bitter cold temperatures, and you'll still get some snow accumulation, 2 to 4 inches. As we've talked about with this storm system over the past several days, really the snow is just a smaller part of this story. It is going to be that flash freeze that's going to cause those very difficult travel conditions, as well as the power lines getting draped with some rain that freezes over. Then we kick in those winds causing power outages. So a couple of those major hazards outside of any snow that falls. So keep that in mind. The snow is not the biggest part of this story. It really is going to be the other hazards with the storm system. So looking at those impacts, snow again is really a medium part of the impacts. Ice is maybe a lower category just because we are going to see some of that first thing tomorrow morning, perhaps as we see a transition, but some of that ice will also be the rain that freezes on surfaces across central Indiana. On the interstates are going to be very tough to really catch up with any kind of treatment to the roads because the rain will transition to snow. Doesn't give the crews a chance to put any brine down, unfortunately. If it did, it just wash away. And then we have that freeze. So we'll see that icing back over. The winds are going to be incredibly high, and we're going to see very bitter cold conditions. So let's look at the timing of this winter storm. We've moved up this time frame just a few hours over the past really 12 hours with the storm system. Last night, I know Sean upped the timing because we had the snow moving in a little sooner. So heavier snow possible really from that 3 to 11 p.m. time frame. And that's after we already had the rain move in. So we'll still see some snow after midnight tomorrow night into Friday morning. It won't likely be quite as heavy, but it's still going to be around. We could see some snow squalls out of this as we just have a lot of dynamics in the atmosphere that's really going to keep that snow around throughout the day. But again, strong winds and that bitter cold air are going to be a big part of this story. With that tight pressure gradient, as I mentioned, we're going to see those winds really gusting up 30 to 50 mile per hour winds, and that's going to cause some of those blizzard conditions. So what do we mean by that? Well, with the blizzard, we look for quarter of a mile of reduced visibility, and that's when we have the heavier snow falling down, and we also have those gusty winds 35 miles per hour or higher. That has to happen over a 3-hour period for the National Weather Service to determine that, yes, indeed, this is a blizzard. Not out of the question that that could happen, perhaps when we have that 3-hour window of some of those more intense time frames tomorrow night into early Friday. However, it's still going to feel like one because we're going to have those very gusty winds causing that reduced visibility. The snow will be falling down horizontally, causing that visibility to fall. And of course, we'll have the flash freeze that will also be considered for the beginning of this event, and then it will likely still be with us as even when you're scraping off your own driveway, you're going to see that layer of ice in the bottom of the snow. So that moisture on roads and sidewalks, it's going to freeze very quickly. And then also because of the strong winds, and they will ramp up as we go 6 a.m. Friday into really midnight Friday night into Saturday, we're going to see those winds actually increasing 45 to 55 miles per hour. That's going to cause those bitter cold wind chills, and these are really intense. Really need to use some caution. Spending any time outdoors, you need to make sure you have all of your areas, your fingers, heads, and your feet covered because we can see frostbite in a short amount of time with these kind of wind chill values running 20 to 40 below zero. So we're looking at these temperatures. By 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we'll still be in those upper 30s, but when that Arctic cold front moves in, we're going to see these temperatures crashing so quickly. We'll likely see about a 30-degree drop in a short amount of time, and then eventually with those wind chill values making it feel even worse. So we have this area of low pressure that's going to be wrapping in that tight pressure gradient, causing those winds to really whip in behind this cold front, and that is going to cause those winds to pick up 45 to 55 miles per hour. So here's a look at those gusts. They will be most intense as we go tomorrow night into Friday afternoon, and then we'll start to see them decreasing a bit. However, it's still going to be very intense with those strong gusty winds. As we look at Saturday afternoon, still going to be intense with that, and even those wind chill values on Friday morning running 20 to 30 below zero. Those are the feels like temperatures. Very intense conditions. We ask that you really prepare for this storm system. It is nothing to mess with. 40 degrees will be your high for this afternoon, but really we'll start to see the brunt of the storm pushing in tomorrow afternoon. 40 degrees down to 5 below zero Friday morning, and we'll see that transition to snow as we go Thursday night into Friday morning. 1 to 2 inches of snow per hour, 4 to 6 inches of snow more likelier for that I-70 corridor. 3 degrees the high for Friday. Christmas Eve day, we're looking at blowing snow because that snow will be on the ground and those winds will still be gusting around 35 miles per hour. We'll see a high around 9 degrees, and then we'll start to see that warning expire Saturday evening. Christmas Eve services, check with your church to make sure those services are still a go. It's going to be very dicey out there. Some may transition to just a video option as well. For Christmas Day, gosh, just unfortunately so bitter cold. Wind chill values running 10 to 20 below zero. Temperatures climb to around 14 degrees. And then as we go into next week, we're going to start to rebound. In fact, if we look at the long-term models, it brings us back into the 40s and possibly some 50s late next week. However, this is what we really need you to pay attention to. So we'll keep you updated as the storm system moves in and as it's happening.